Hello, everyone. As Eric said, my name is Karen Hovey. And on behalf of the 6th District PTA, I would like to welcome you to this kickoff of our Parenting in a Pandemic speaker series. We are thrilled to have so many of you joining with us tonight. Tonight's speaker is Stacy Wilson. Stacy Wilson is an educator at heart. She has spent nearly 2 decades teaching and caring for young children in her own home preschool, in community preschools and daycares, and in parent co-ops, and in the public school system in 3 states and 2 countries. Stacy is an ICF certified parenting coach and a certified parenting instructor with Hand in Hand Parenting. She is the owner of her own parenting education practice, Grow in Goodness, where her goal is to reach as many parents as possible to let them know that they are not alone and that parenting can be easier. She wants all parents to have evidence-based tools to connect, play, and grow with their children. Stacy has 2 school-age daughters of her own. And now, Stacy Wilson.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to see so many of us here tonight. So as Karen and Eric both said, I am an educator and parenting coach. I work with an organization called Hand in Hand Parenting. And Hand in Hand Parenting is a nonprofit based out of Palo Alto here in California. It's been around since 1989 and was founded by a woman named Patty Whipfler. Within Hand in Hand, we teach 5 practical tools that help parents with the daily challenges of parenting. And these tools are cross-cultural and currently being used in over 19 countries all around the world. So no matter where you're from or what your background is, these tools will be able to apply to your situation. For tonight's agenda, just like Eric mentioned before, we'll first start out with some breakout rooms, and then we'll go into the bulk of my presentation tonight, which is 3 ways to support your learner, particularly in distance learning program that we have going on in California this year. Then we'll do another breakout room and then a Q&A session towards the end. Tonight, we will, in your first breakout room, what we're going to do is you will be split into groups of 4. Each person will have a full 2 minutes to first introduce yourself, how many kids you have, how old they are, where you're from, where you live. And then you can choose to answer the question, what is the best part of distance learning for your family this year? And, or depending on the time, what is the hardest thing for you and your family this year regarding distance learning? I'll have Eric go ahead and post those questions into the breakout room so you don't have to remember them. So what you'll do is you'll each take 2 minutes, use your phone to time yourself so that we can kind of keep on track. We only want to spend about a total of 10 minutes in our breakout rooms. You're going to start with the person who's got the most children. So talk amongst yourself, figure out who's got the most children. And then when listening, just take care to not interrupt the person who's speaking and let everyone get their turn in. And with that, hopefully we can split into some breakout rooms.
Stacy, did you get the unmute?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Got it. Do we have everybody back? Mostly.
You're probably good.
Yes, I think you're good.
All right. All right, so let's get started on the meaty part of our presentation here. So 3 practical ways to support your learner no matter the format. So these will be helpful for you as you continue distance learning. If you move to a different model, these can still be applied no matter the format that school will take this year. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing that I'd like to talk about is creating a routine. So routines provide 3 main things. Routines provide stability, predictability, and safety. All three of these things have kind of been shaken up during this pandemic. And I'm sure you as an adult and as a parent have felt the unsettling effects of not having those things. So by creating a routine within our own families, we can really give our children back some of those things that the pandemic really altered for everyone. When you create your routine, though, we want to make sure that it's based around your family's specific and actual priorities, not worrying about societal norms or pressures, but actually thinking about what's important to your family and what do you want to prioritize for you and your kids. So the first part is to focus on transitional times of the day. So mornings before school, how do you transition into online school? How do you do learning breaks? What is your schedule for after school time, dinner times, and bedtimes? Those are the main parts of the day. For this part of the presentation, we're going to focus mostly on the morning section of the day before school begins, because it's going to be the easiest way to be able to set your child up for success before school starts. That's where we want to be. We want our kid going into their school day feeling really good. So when forming a routine, some questions that you can ask yourself as you do this for your own family is, what do I, as the parent, need to have happen before school begins? What do I want everyone dressed and their hair done? Is that important to you? Is that not as important to you? What do you want to be the things that you want for your family to have done? Do you care if their beds are made? Do you care if their rooms are tidy? Those types of things are things you're going to want to think about. And you're going to want to keep it to approximately 5 or less things. So we've really got to pinpoint exactly what you want done before school begins. And you don't want to make it too overwhelming, especially for kids under 8. Once you get above 8, you can add a couple more on. They're able to handle a little bit more responsibility there. And then what do you as a parent need to get done before they're awake? Or what do you need to help them with? So yeah, and then once you've kind of figured out where your priorities are, then you're going to want to guess how long it's going to take. How long would it take you? How long do you think it's going to take your kid? And then add more time onto that, because they're kids and they do things a much slower pace than we might like them to, or that we would do ourselves. So always add in a little bit of extra time, leaving lots of wiggle room, because rushing will create tension, disconnection. Nobody likes that. Once you've kind of got a timeline of what you want to happen and how long you think it'll take, that's how you determine your kids' wake up times. So if you need to be ready at 8, you determine it's going to take 45 minutes. You can do your wake up time according to that, unless your kids have a standard wake up time that they're waking up before that. And that can help you to get started on creating your routine. So once you've made your list, kind of gotten your basic timeline, then you want to go back and check it. Is it manageable for the age and development of your child? What things can they do on their own? What things do they need assistance or supervision with? So for example, if you had a kindergartner and you want them to make their bed and put their pajamas in the laundry as 2 of their jobs in the morning, a kindergartner is not going to be able to make their bed and put their laundry away in the same time frame or with the same amount of independence as a 5th grader might. So make sure that you've made adjustments for the ages and the developmental abilities of your own kids. If your child struggles with a particular thing like teeth brushing or brushing their hair, make sure that you've adjusted the time to make it appropriate for that specific child. Not for what you want it to happen, how you want it to happen, but how it typically happens. You want to plan for it to take a little bit longer so that your kid can be successful there. Once you've decided on your priorities and adjusted for the age and development of your child, figure out what you want done before they wake up. So do you want to have a nice quiet cup of coffee by yourself before they wake up, so that you're in the right mindset to be able to get them going and help them, and you've got a fresh mind as well. There's nothing like waking up to the screaming kids and your day is at a start and you're not quite ready for it. So trying to figure out what you need to do, how much time you need, and how to put that into the schedule so that you have what you need so that they can have what they need later on. The next piece is to add connection. So up here on this slide, I've got the 3: stability, predictability, and safety. And then I've also added connection. Connection is going to be a vital piece of this morning routine. When I say connection, I mean one-on-one time per child. So I recommend 3 to 5 minutes in the morning. You can do more if you have more time, but mornings typically tend to be a little tight. So with this, we're going to go into a much more detail in a minute on what that one-on-one connection is going to look like and what it's going to do for you and for your kid. Once you've got those things in and you've added a little bit of time for the connection piece, lay out your timeline. Make sure that it's loose and flexible, that you've got bigger chunks of time so that there is enough time in the morning before school starts to get everything done. And we want the routine to really serve you. We don't want you to serve the routine. We don't want a strict schedule. We want a routine, an order or sequence of events that happen, and not necessarily a very strict timeline on how and when they happen. Obviously, there are some time constraints, but we want to make it as loose as we can. It will help decrease any frustration that might pop up there. All right. Dealing with 2 screens tonight, and I'm not quite used to it. Here we go. Next slide. All right, so here's some examples that I have used. Oh, wait, did I skip a slide? Here we go. Yeah, so what we want to do is you want to make this look however works best for your family. I have some examples on the next slide. So the important parts of it are stability, predictability, safety, and connection. We want to make it flexible, and we want to make sure that the connection is there. That's going to be the most important part. If you don't get their hair brushed, you know, it is what it is. But the connection piece is really going to set them on the right track for their day. All right, so here's some examples that I have used with my own kids and with other people's kids in a variety of settings. So the yellow one is a simple one for a school-age kid who's reading, just a basic layout. It's loose, there's big enough time blocks in there that it's not too tight. And then on the right side here, we've got a bunch of picture schedules. Now, if you've got a child under the age of 8, they read in pictures. Up until about 8 is when that starts to really switch consistently. Even if you have a child who can read words, pictures work better for them. These just go on Pinterest. All of these were found on Pinterest. Look up a picture routine, picture schedules for toddlers, things like that. And you'll be able to find already curated pictures you can print out, use the ones you want, or add your own. On this green one here on this slide, I've added like errands like Target and Costco and Trader Joe's, just printing pictures off the web. So you can add in whatever you want, mix up the order, create what you want to happen for your kids. The picture routines also help kids to be independent. In this red one here in the middle, on the sides here, I've just got 2 clothespins with a picture of my 2 kids, and then they just move their clothespin to whatever job they're doing. I used to want it in order. They don't like to do it in order, so they just do it in whatever order they feel like it, and they just move their clothespin around, and it makes them feel empowered that they're capable and independent as well, because they can see what needs to be done without you having to actually say anything. So now we're going to jump further into doing the connection piece of our morning routine. So the connection piece is really important. It serves as a way to create, trying to find my mouse here, a way to create cooperation. So connection breeds cooperation. When our child feels connected to us and to what they're doing, it's going to breed cooperation. Hand in Hand teaches a connection tool called Special Time. Special Time is an active form of listening. Children's play is their vehicle for telling us about their life. Adding it into your morning routine will give your child connection, which also creates safety to be able to start their school day. Connection helps them engage their brains so that they can think well. And so that's why we really want it as part of a morning routine before school. We want their brains engaged as highly as we can get them before they get on those computers, because we all know that distance learning is really challenging. All right, so Special Time. Ugh. Okay. Special time is pretty simple. And again, the purpose of it is to build a connection between parent and child. This connection piece builds your child's intelligence. And over time, it will create neural pathways of trust, cooperation, respect. And it's just as important as eating and sleeping for a child's development. When a child feels connected, it signals to their brain that they are safe to learn and to grow. It nourishes their developing limbic system and is vital for full brain functioning. It's based on on what's called non-directive or child-led play therapy. It's based on the theory that play is a child's language. The toys in the room are considered the words that a child uses to express their inner experiences and how they perceive and experience their world. Non-directive play therapy is based on respect for the child, confidence in their ability to direct their own process. So it requires that the therapist, or in our cases, as a parent, to maintain unconditional acceptance and positive regard for the child, which I think is something all parents have. Unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, and positive regard for our kids. We think our kids are good. And so it's really, those are two big pieces in special time. Special time is also used to help keep kids balanced. That connection piece really helps them stay balanced so they don't go one way or the other. All right, so how do you do it? Special time is fairly simple. It has a framework around it. So what you're going to do to set up special time with your child is to first give it a name. We use special time in my house. You can call it whatever you want, but it needs a name so that it stands out from any other part of your child's day. We use a timer and we use it to set time for something, a short defined amount of time for the child. So anywhere from 3 minutes if that's all you have, to up to 20 minutes or more if you have that time for them. The timer serves as a way to distinguish this time from any other time that you may play with your child. And it allows the parent to choose how much time you have. Like, oh, they want to play Legos again. Like, oh, I can do that for 5 minutes. Like, I can wrap my head around 5 minutes and I can give my child that amount of time. So the amount of time is always up to the parent. And that timer helps to enforce the time so that we as a parent can say, okay, I can do that for 5 minutes, but I can't do it for 20, right? It helps us be able to play with them when we know that it's not going to be forever. And we can choose according to our own bandwidth and patience of that particular day and that particular moment, how much time we can give them. During this time, your child gets to lead. So you are going to do anything they want to do. And we're going to try our very, very best not to say no. During this time, I mean, obviously you're going to have time restraints, monetary restraints, and some safety restraints. Sometimes kids will really push against some boundaries, and you might have to set boundaries around safety. For the most part, we really, really want to use this time to say yes to your child. And then during the time, you're also going to give that child your full attention. Put away your phone, and get the other kids doing something different. You want to be able to spend or focus that defined amount of time on that one child so that they can feel your attention. And that connection will really start to turn their brain on so that they are in their best state for school. And we don't want to use it as a reward for doing a task or behaving. Special time happens no matter how they behave or no matter how well they've done. It is something that connects you as a parent and child and strengthens the relationship. So setting up special time is fairly straightforward with your kid. Grab your kids, tell them what you want to do, name it, tell them that they're going to be in charge, that you're going to do whatever they want you to do for however long you've decided. You're going to use this timer, and when it goes off, you'll thank them for spending time together, and then you'll move on to the next agenda item of your day. And then let them go. Let them Let them do it. It may take children a few attempts to fully grasp the concept that they literally can do anything and that you are really going to pay attention to them for that entire time. But they're going to catch on really quickly. And once they do, they'll really thrive under your warm attention. So one experience that I'll share from my own family, a short example of how special time can help breed cooperation. So this was when one of my kids was 3 years old. I was caught rushing in the morning. I skipped our normal special time routine. I was getting super, super frustrated with my 3-year-old. I really needed her to get her shoes on so that we could go and pick up her sister. And I could feel myself really, really becoming tense. And I remember I stopped, looked at my clock, did a little mental math. I was like, okay, I don't need to rush as much as I'm rushing. Let's take a little time. And my toddler was following me around, reminding me that we hadn't done special time yet. And so I told her, all right, we've got 3 minutes. I have 3 minutes for you. Set my timer. We sat right down in front of the door where her shoes were. We played whatever she wanted for 3 minutes. I don't even remember what it was. The timer went off. She looked up at me, smiled, grabbed her shoes, and in less than a minute, we were out the door. So instead of turning it into a power struggle where I was fighting her to get her shoes on, we were able to turn and de-escalate it completely into a moment of connection where she felt seen by me, and then she was able to cooperate because her brain was going from, I need this, I need this, I need this, to I got what I needed, I now feel safe and I can function, and she was able to do what I needed her to do. It's not always going to yield immediate results like that, but it can. And that was one of the big aha moments for me where I realized how important connection is, even when it's just 3 minutes. They thrive on it. They really need it to be really functioning well. All right, so next is slide number 2, or tip number 2, which is providing time and space within that routine for it to get emotionally messy. So kids, humans, all humans, kids included, have emotions, and children are not exempt from them. In fact, they're really quite incapable of handling all the emotions that come just due to brain development. So I'm going to jump into a little bit of brain science here. I'm not a brain scientist, but luckily for us, we have so much has been discovered about the developing brain, and so many experts have really put it into useful terms. So here's what is called the hand-brain model by Daniel Siegel. So in the hand-brain model, you've got your hand, and the wrist right here is representative of the spinal cord. The palm is the brain stem, or the reptilian brain, which is responsible for the states of arousal like hunger, cold, and our survival instincts. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The thumb represents the limbic system, or the emotional part of the brain. So the limbic regions help create the emotions that evoke motion. So they motivate us to act in response to the meaning we assign to whatever is happening to us in that moment. So the limbic area is crucial for how we form relationships and become emotionally attached to one another. The fingers up here is called the cortex, and it's the thinking part of the brain. It allows us to think about thinking and the ability to use logic, good judgment, to imagine, and to create. The brain's much more complicated than that, but broken down simply, those are the parts of the brain. So when all systems are working well, we've got our reptilian brain here with our very primitive response systems. We've got the emotional part of the brain, and we've also got the thinking part of the brain. And when it's all working, they're all touching, they're all communicating well, and everything is going really smoothly. When they are not working so well, they become disconnected. And what happens when they disconnect is that our thinking brain, which is our fingers, literally disconnects, leaving the emotional brain and the reptilian brain to take over. So this is what we know as it's called the flipped lid. And each of us has probably experienced this within our own selves, within with our own children and others, people that are close to us. So children's brains are very much in development over the course of their childhood and into their 20s. The emotional center of the brain, or the limbic system, isn't fully developed until around the age of 24. So for parents, this means that our children are literally not able, because their brains aren't fully developed, to handle the everyday bumps and bruises of childhood like an adult would. So each frustration, no matter how small, has the potential to send them into this disconnected state where they aren't functioning optimally. So, has anyone ever had a child lose their mind over the color of their cup at dinner, or the shape of their sandwich, or the fact that they can't put on a sweatshirt as pants? They will literally lose it over the tiniest things, and that this is a signal that they have a flipped lid. Their thinking brain is no longer connected, and all that is coming out is the emotional parts, which is where we'll see a lot of tears and tantrums, or the reptilian brain, where we'll see a lot of fighting, running, hiding, things like that, those very primitive response systems. So that's where the brain is when it's got a flipped lid. So what happens when a child gets upset, slide change here, is that they begin to signal. So signaling can look like a lot of different things, and it's going to be different for each child. Some kids will ask, some kids will start whining, begging, grunting, showing physical signs of frustration, moaning, yelling. All those things are signals to us. And if their need isn't heard, it will progress into louder, more aggressive signals. This progression is typically quickly, very fast, within seconds, minutes, and oftentimes it can be quite subtle too, especially as they get older. For an example, with an infant, it's quite easy to spot. You've got your infant on your lap, you're playing, enjoying eye contact, you're babbling back and forth, and then you need to set them down to do something. As soon as you stand up, they start to kind of fuss, and they're like, I know what's happening, I don't want you to put me down. Then you put them down and they automatically go from a little fuss to a big cry, right? They don't want you to set them down. So those are a signal that they do not want you to do what they think you're going to do, and they begin signaling with a small noise that goes into a big loud signal. And the same is true for older children. But the means by which they deliver their message or their signal changes, and will often morph into the behaviors they know will get our attention. So usually the ones that push our buttons. Right? They know that we will pay attention and read their signals if they do this thing. And all that a child is doing is communicating. They're communicating with their behavior that they need you. And it's important to notice when we get into this frazzled state, to start to notice our child's signals as soon as they start to signal. When we wait too long, oftentimes they're already got a flipped lid, and their aggressive signaling flips our lid, and then we've got two not functioning well people, and that's usually when the parent yells or does something that they regret later on. And so if we can step in sooner, it will start to alleviate some of those conflicts. and not waiting until our patience or our bandwidth to respond well is gone. We want to step in when we're still in a state that we can respond well to their needs. So this is a tool through that Hand in Hand teaches. It's a tool that is called Stay Listening. Broken down simply, it means to stay and to listen to our child's upsets. So special time serves as a means of listening to our children through a play-based connection. Stay listening is another way in which we can support our children by listening to their upsets. It is the act by which a parent or caregiver offers support through the child's hard feelings. There's no need during this process to distract fix, soothe, or shame them out of the feeling. Our role is simply to allow the feelings to exist and to listen to them as they come. So feelings and emotional upsets tend to roll in kind of like a wave at the seaside, right? They come in really fast and they crash and then they recede. Researchers have found that a typical emotion lasts only 90 seconds. So that being said, though, children, when they've found a very willing listener, will often begin an upset about one thing, and then it'll roll into processing any buildup of emotions until they're done. So the cries can last longer than that. This can lead to substantial cries. However, most day-to-day upsets are much quicker and last less than 5 minutes if we let the waves crash and let them roll through them. An important piece is that trying to soothe or fix or downplay our child's feelings might get them to stop feeling in that moment. But what happens is that the feelings don't evaporate, they get stored in our bodies. And so those stuffed feelings eventually are going to become too much. And that is when you get really big, explosive emotional upsets. So if we can allow them the time and the space to process their feelings more consistently in real time, then there's less of that backlog of emotions for big, explosive upsets. So one analogy that Patty Whippler, the founder of Hand in Hand, gives is this. I call it the stubbed toe analogy. So imagine you as a parent with a fully formed, well-functioning, beautiful brain. You're woken up in the night by a vomiting toddler. Then you have a work meeting. You end up being late for it and you go to present your part in this meeting. There's a technical glitch. You're not able to complete your presentation. You head back to your computer, feeling kind of frustrated and glum. You look for your cup of coffee, only to realize you've left it on the counter at home. The day just keeps kind of tumbling. Nothing seems to be quite right. You end up getting called home early to help with the sick kids. And it seems finally at the end of the day, that things are under control. You're helping the older kids get bathed and you stub your toe walking down the hallway. Naturally, this hurts physically, but you crumble into a sobbing heap in the hallway, or you go raging around, swearing, jumping around. Typically goes into one of those two, crying or kind of raging anger. Yes, the stub toe hurt, but it was actually a catalyst to all the emotional upsets that had happened to you during the day. And once you start to let the emotions flow, you go from being upset about the stub toe to being upset about all the other little things that happen throughout your day. So the stub toe was simply the door to kind of all of those feelings that had come up. And when that door was opened, you were able to release all of that from the day. And this is what we refer to as a pretext. Children are masters at finding a pretext. They use this as a way to open the door when their feelings become too much for them. And that's when they cry over the position of the seam in their socks or their car seat buckle that hasn't been changed. It's all of a sudden too tight or too loose or whatever. That they wanted the blue cup and then you give them the blue cup and then they didn't want the blue cup, they wanted the yellow cup. Those things, they're just looking for something to open the door, and they will literally cry about anything. It doesn't matter. They're going to find a very small thing to help them open the door. And what we don't see in those moments, we see, oh, they're crying over the blue cup again, like, so frustrating. But what we don't see is their kind of invisible weather system that they've got going up in their heads. They have this feelings weather system. All of us do. We all carry it, and it's affected by daily events, circumstances, all the things that have happened through us during the day and throughout our lives. And we don't get to see that. And so they may be crying about the blue cup, but likely it's really never about the blue cup. It's about the boy who was mean to them at the playground, or they didn't get called on in class, or the internet glitched and it was frustrating. Like, all of those things add up really quickly for a child, especially when because their brains are so under-equipped and underdeveloped to handle those things. So then you're going to have behaviors. The behaviors that will present themselves are typically a cry for help. The brain has lost its connection. It's not functioning in its optimal state. The behaviors are turning into physical signs of the disconnection, or the emotions. As Brene Brown states, emotions are energy in motion. So naturally, for children who don't have the self-control as an adult would, they come out in physical ways. Energy in motion, and it comes out shooting through their arms, shooting through their legs. We've all been privy to this if you have children of your own. So this energy can look like yelling, aggression, tantrums, crying, shutting down, calling names, saying hurtful things, refusals, things like that. And it can look different for each kid, each day, each upset. It can change all the time. So just like in the stub toe analogy, the hurts have already been done. The tears are simply the body's physiological release of the actual hurts. So there's nothing in that moment of stubbing your toe that a loving partner could do to fix, distract, or soothe you from that. You were crying about the stub toe, but also about all the other things. And all that they can do is to listen to your frustration or sadness about the day. And to offer you support in that way. So that's exactly what we do when we stay listen to a child. Our role as the parents is to offer the same for our children. So it's fairly simple and very passive during a stay listen. So staying close, physically close, and listening to the feelings all the way through. Let them cry for as long as they need to. And offer, but you don't need to force physical contact. Some kids like it, some kids don't. It's going to be up to your kid. And during this time, their brain is not connected, remember? So no amount of lecturing, trying to teach them, labeling their feelings, disciplining them is going to make their brain reconnect. They've got to make it all the way through their little tunnel of emotion and come out on the other side. If you do feel a lot of times parents want to say something and they feel like they need to say something. You don't have to. But if you do feel like you want to say something, you can say things like, I'm here. I'll be here with you. I'm staying right here next to you. Those types of things will let your child know that you're not leaving them when they're having a hard time, that you will stay with them and help them through. Emotions are really scary for kids. They're very overwhelming and they overpower their whole bodies and systems. So if we can stay with them and tell them that, it really helps to calm and bring that connection piece back so that their brains can function more fully. The main role that you want to play is to remember that they're good, listen to their feelings, staying close. You can say simple phrases, but you don't have to. And your job is also to keep it safe. And so this can mean physically preventing hitting, kicking, blocking your child from their target if they're targeting somebody else, to physically get in there and not allow hurts to happen. So they can't hurt somebody. That's the only kind of limit that we place on their emotions, is they can't hurt. And you may have to move them to a different location too. If they're, if this happens in the middle of a grocery store, you're probably going to want to leave the grocery store and come back at a later time once your child has come back online, essentially. And the lovely thing about this is that after the storm has passed, your child is going to be so much more able and capable of learning better, showing an improved mood, having less fear and anxiety. They have an improved ability to connect with others. They're able to think more rationally. They're able to make more logical choices, and they're going to have a larger window of tolerance. So a window of tolerance is how much frustration or hard things they can handle before they kind of blow their gasket and they just give up. So we want that window of tolerance to get bigger and bigger and bigger as they grow. And it does. And helping them through their emotional storms instead of trying to go around their emotions will actually improve their window of tolerance very quickly. In the book called Parenting from the Inside Out, written by Daniel Siegel and Mary Hartzell, they state that researchers have found that intense emotion by itself is not the problem. When parents provide support during difficult emotional experiences, children actually have the opportunity to develop a more sophisticated understanding of the mind. So the release or the display of emotion does not represent the hurt. It's actually the healing modality through which we can heal our hurts. And so it does take a little bit of a mind shift on how we view tears. But it can be really huge for a child. And you'll notice once you've done it a few times that your child can really, they've cleared out the gunk in their systems and their brains are just, it's like a reboot for a computer, right? It really reboots their system and clears out any gunk that may have been there, and they're better able to handle all the things that life throws at them. Emotions can be really scary, and we can teach them that they can survive those storms and that we are going to be right there with them. That's an important piece. We don't want them to survive these storms all by themselves. We want to be right there with them so that they still feel safe within that. The big piece that comes with that, though, is that it does require us to maintain our calm through their storm. And in order to help us understand why, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the science behind why humans cry. So I have a whole class actually about this because it fascinates me. So I'm going to give you a quick Cliff Notes version here. So why do humans cry? Humans cry because tears trigger social bonding and human connection. Crying signals to ourselves and to other people that there's an important problem that is at least temporarily beyond our ability to cope. Tears also show those around us that we're vulnerable, and vulnerability is critical for human connection. So during our child's emotional storm, many parents find it hard to keep their calm. And this is completely normal and comes back to our brains. Emotional researchers have shown that the same areas of the brain are activated when we're actually emotionally upset ourselves and by seeing someone emotionally upset. So when we see our child upset, the same sirens are going off in our brain that are going off in their brain. And that is where we have to take our more mature brains and really exercise our ability to regulate our emotions so that we can help our child regulate theirs. Often it can feel to us that our children are being manipulative, trying to push our buttons, and that could go back to the our own feelings about feelings and how things were handled, how our feelings were handled when we were young, and just the broader social constructs around children and their outward displays of emotion. People don't like outward displays of emotion, and our society shows it. So keeping those in mind as well. And my last tip is parenting support, parental support for ourselves. So parenting in modern society it's not well supported at all. In a recently released book called Burnout, it talks about the lack of emotional support as one of the 3 main things that leads to burnout. This crossed all types of burnout, from career burnout to parenting burnout, and just all the way across the board. So just as we are going to be supporting our children through their emotional storms, we also need support with ours. Oftentimes as a parent, we can become triggered by our own children's behaviors and their emotions. And in order to maintain our calm, we must be supported well. We need a place to take our upsets and a context for releasing emotions without harming the ones we love, especially our children. Often when we're triggered by our children, we will lose our cool and we might do or say things that were done to us when we were young. This has nothing to do with whether we are a good parent at all. All parents experience it to one degree or another. What matters is what we do and how we support ourselves so that when it happens, we can tuck away our feelings and address it later with a kind and caring adult instead of unintentionally kind of vomiting it back on to the people closest to us and often to our children. It's not that we ever intend to react the way that we do. It kind of just happens. And which is why I refer to it kind of as vomiting it back on, because it's not intentional per se, but there are things that we can do to lessen that where we can support ourselves. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to like break the cycle of yelling? Have you ever reacted so quickly to something your child did that you're shocked by your own behavior? These things are tucked into our emotional memories when we were very young, and they're very difficult to unstick. So this is why hand-in-hand parenting promotes a process called a listening partnership. This is where you find another fellow parent or adult, doesn't matter if they're a parent or not, but it definitely helps if they are. And you establish a routine of listening to each other. It's helpful to find someone who's not typically in your circle of interaction. It helps to keep things confidential, safe, and distinct from other social interactions. This person simply serves as a listener in your life. A listening exchange takes elements from the tools that I presented that we use with our children. It gives adults the support that they need to be there for their children and to think well. So we use an equal exchange time done by you and your partner. You use a timer to track each other's time, and your role is to simply give them warm attention with no judgment or advice. It's similar to setting up special time in that there are certain boundaries that you'll want to uphold to keep this partnership distinct from other daily social interactions. Even if you're doing it with someone that you know, you want to keep that time kind of set aside. The distinctions and boundaries you'll want to make are defining this time as separate and distinct from your regular social interactions. So there's going to be no need for small talk. And the purpose of this time is to be listened to and to also offer listening to another parent. And there's no obligation to follow regular societal norms for conversations. Set a defined amount of time. Each time you have a listening exchange, decide how much time each person is comfortable with. So for example, if each person has a half an hour, split that time in half, leaving a little bit of a transition between the two of you. Split the time evenly. You talk for half and you listen for half. Use a timer to time yourself so that you can respect each other's time and not one person takes over. While in the listening role, you're going to want to hold warm regard for the person. No opinions, advice, or judgment is needed. And anything said during a listening exchange is kept confidential and never referred to at a later point without permission from the person. So listening is about hearing the other person's feelings, which do not actually reflect how they are as a person or a parent. For instance, on a listening exchange, you might tell your partner how frustrated you are about your child doing something and how you just feel like screaming in their face. And this is exactly the space to be able to say those things with no judgment and to have the warmth of a listener who believes that you are a good parent and that you are doing your best. And by being able to have that safe space, then when our child triggers us like that, we have already released those things and we can respond well to our child so that we are not actually screaming at them. So you can do a listening partnership with anyone. It could be a friend, an acquaintance, or a family member, or a perfect stranger. All of my listening partners have been perfect strangers to me at the time, and some from all across the world through the Hand-in-Hand network. I have some in Switzerland and Ireland and all through the United States as well. Finding someone outside of your typical circles can be really helpful. And when you're talking, you just follow your own stream of consciousness, talk about things that are frustrating you, and just let the feelings and the words flow. It doesn't have to be organized. It doesn't have to make a story. You're not really worrying about any of that during this time. You can use it however you need to use it. And sometimes you can ask your partner for a prompt, like tell me about the birth of your oldest child or something to help you get started. And that's pretty much the listening partnership. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break out into another breakout room. And I'm hopeful that we'll still be able to break out into the same groups as before. I'm not sure what the numbers are looking like, if they match what we had before. But hopefully they will match fairly well. So we'll break out into another breakout session. You'll have 2 minutes each. Go ahead and time yourself just as we did before. Start with the person with the youngest child. And you can use the prompt, what was most helpful in this presentation tonight? And what you are looking forward to trying out in your own family. And within this group too, if you'd like to take a minute during this breakout room to exchange info with anyone in that group, if you're interested in setting up a listening partnership, you can go ahead and do that. It's a great opportunity to meet other parents that are not within your own typical social circles. So you're welcome to do that if you would like. And I think my screen share died, so let me do that again. Okay. Cool. All right, yeah, so we can just go ahead and move into the Q&A portion. I'm not sure how that will work.
Yeah, so Karen and I have a list of questions. Karen, do you want to start asking them?
Sure, let me grab that. Look on the other side. Sorry about that. Okay, so how to get kids out of their room after a full day's Zoom class meeting. I'm worried about their eyesight and not getting enough exercise. Any thoughts on that?
Challenging one I'm sure is quite common because screens are addicting, as we all know. One thing that I find helpful is to first join them. So whatever they're doing on their screen, kind of go in, join them, ask them about it, let them talk about what they're doing, and then to warmly set a limit. It's time to shut our computers right now. We're going to go out for a walk, or we're going to go to the park, or whatever it is that you've got planned for them, or simply we're going to be done with screen time for the day and go ahead, shut their computer. And then you may have to use one of the tools that was presented tonight and listen to the feelings that they have about that, because likely they will have feelings about that, and that's okay. I mean, if somebody came and ripped your phone out of your hand while you were doing something, you'd probably have feelings about it too. So making sure that you're making a little bit of space for that. And yeah.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Okay, another one. Any ideas for special time with a middle schooler or high schooler, what that would look like?
Yeah, so that looks very different than a young child. But you can still get playful with a middle schooler or a high schooler. Hand in Hand actually does offer a class specifically geared towards parents of teens and preteens. And so that might be worth some time. I am not quite there yet with my own kids, but from other instructors, I've heard a lot of success with simply labeling it and, announcing it's special time doesn't typically land well with a teenager. and so you kind of have to skip that part of it and just join them in whatever they're doing. Again, just kind of slowly slither your way into their little world and ask them what funny videos they've seen lately, or memes, or whatever happens to be the going thing, and create connection. The goal is to create connection. And so however you can do that with your teen is going to have an effect.
Okay. Do you have any ideas on encouraging others in the parent role who may be distracted by responsibilities, supporting the family, but how to get that other parent involved in special time?
Listening. So using this tool of listening to another adult, you can start it out with saying like, oh, you seemed really off today. Would you like to, maybe do you want some alone time? Or, offering to kind of take something off of their plate a little bit, and then listening and making space for them. Maybe they're feeling really frustrated by a certain child's certain behaviors, or there's something stressful on work side or other things that may be affecting them. And then encouraging them by doing it yourself. I mean, we can't force anyone to do anything. And so doing it yourself and having that parent see you do it and the difference that it makes in the relationships between you and your children will hopefully be a motivational factor in inviting them in. And you can invite them in and explain what you're doing so that they also know and can choose to join or to not.
Okay. Do you have any ideas for what could be done with a 10-year-old who sometimes feels sad for every small thing? Any suggestions?
So that's where, kind of like I said, that flipped lid. So every single little thing is causing an upset, which means that their capacity is topped off, right? Every little thing that goes in is going to come spilling right back out because their jar is completely full. And so letting them. So instead of trying to fix it, soothe it, distract them away from the feeling, let them feel all the feelings. And because it seems as if they might have a quite full jar of feelings, it might take some time. And you can encourage the process by saying things like, oh, that sounds really hard. That's one that kids will really take and run with. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, it so is. And they'll just let all those tears really flow. And then notice after any differences that you see in your child's behavior. If it's still really rigid, they haven't got it all out yet.
Okay, here's another one. Any good tips on getting young children to want to get up in the morning when they aren't excited for school and for the day to start?
So Hand in Hand teaches 5 tools. I mentioned 3. So there's 2 other tools that they teach, and one of them is called play listening, which is similar to stay listening, except you play as a form of listening to your child. And there's lots of ideas around how to get kids to do things in a silly way. One of my favorites is to tell them what not to do. So I beg them to stay in bed. And I'm like, no, you can't get dressed. Please don't get dressed. I wanted to cuddle you all day in bed. And then they bolt out of bed as fast as they can. You've never seen kids get ready faster than that. Typically works better with the younger group than it does with the older group. But using play as a way to kind of break the tension around you really wanting something and them pushing against it, you can use play as a way of avoiding some of those conflicts.
Okay. Okay, here's one for you. How do you react during their emotional storm when they yell or say hurtful things? And this is from a high schooler parent.
A high schooler parent. This is a little bit harder, but we have to remember that despite the fact that our kid may tower over us, even as a high schooler, their emotional brains aren't fully developed. And so they may be yelling all of those things and they may be feeling all of those things like you're the worst mom, you're the worst parent, you're so mean. All of those things may be spilling out. That doesn't mean that's necessarily how they actually feel. It's just the feeling that's rumbling around right now for them. And I would say the same thing that you might do for a close friend who's really venting and having a really hard time with something, is to really listen to them and make space for those feelings without taking them to heart, which is really hard to do. But just know that your child is good. Remember that they're good while they're screaming at you, as hard as that may be. And they will feel that love and support from you. And they'll be able to release all of that built up stuff. I mean, it's probably has nothing to do with you. The way that they're acting, it's just a buildup of things in their life that have caused kind of an overflow.
Okay. Okay, I know it's almost 8:30, but I did have someone ask about your slides. If they
Mhm.
could somehow get your slides to share with another parent.
Yeah, I think so. I think another parent had also asked for resources and websites and all the things, which I can happily give to Eric, and he can send out like a follow-up email or whatever.
Yep, we'll put it on our website and send it out to an email to all those that registered tonight with the recording as well.
Perfect. Great.
Okay, it's hard to choose because I know our time is running out. Um, what is a good balance for screen time for kids? We constantly have issues around screen time, partly because this is their main method of social connection, but we also know
Mhm.
that social connection can be a Trojan horse for just playing more video games.
Yeah, I don't think there's a really right or wrong answer to this. It's whatever you and your parenting partner feel comfortable with for your kids. So you can set limits on it however you see fit. If you notice your kids going off track after they've spent so much time on it, then maybe that's where you set your limit. Or maybe you're only comfortable with after school's over that they spend an hour or 30 minutes or none. It's really up to you as the parent and what you feel comfortable with and uh, what you want in your own home.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Stacy, so if people want to reach you.
Yeah. So if they want to reach me, my website is called growinggoodness.com. Is that screen sharing? Yes. Okay. It's called growinggoodness.com. You can reach me there, or you can reach me at growinggoodness@gmail.com. On my website, there's lots of resources. You can also go to the Hand in Hand Parenting main page, which is handinhandparenting.org. And there's tons of resources, classes. You can sign up for consultations with me or with any of the other Hand in Hand parenting instructors as well.
Okay, well, thank you, Stacy, and thanks to everybody who joined us. Join the Sister Swift PTA for our kickoff event. And please join us next Wednesday, November 11th at 7 p.m. as we host Susan Stone speaking on developing social skills while social distancing. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight.